Behind the scenes, this was one of the most shocking recording ever of a pop record. Oh yes, and this time, of course, this particular story also involved the late Queen Mother and the late Queen Elizabeth. As ever, let me explain. Morning, chums. Nice to see you. Thank you for joining me today in the very much rain-drenched London. So as you can see, I am under protection here. So forgive me if it's not the usual beautiful scenery, but consequently, you've got to go where you've got to go, as John Wayne said, haven't you? Absolutely. I'm glad you understand. Thank you as ever for all your support for all the recent videos. It really means a lot. And thank you for your kind comments about filming on the train. I know I have to be honest, it's very strange because the carriage is quite empty when you do it. I think, oh, that's fine. And I never realised there was a man sat behind me. And I suddenly thought, oh, all right. He did get up and look slightly embarrassed. Well, obviously, I know it's between you and I, isn't it? We don't want every Tom, Dick and Harry listening in, do we? It's a bit like our story today about a lady that I was lucky enough to meet very, very briefly. A golden age comedy icon that sadly is now mainly forgotten. She died penniless and less than 10 people attended her funeral. It's a very sad story, but there's a nice ending to it, which I really wanted to share with you. As ever, let me explain. We're talking, of course, about the wonderful variety artist Hilda Baker. And towards the end of her life, particularly 1978, the advance of Alzheimer's disease was really taking over. It wasn't really talked about in that particular period, and Hilda privately thought she was going mad because nobody really diagnosed it at that level. She couldn't remember lines, she'd fallen out with co-stars. Her inability to remember even her own sort of act resulted in her being paid off in a local club towards the end of her career. Things were that bad. However, a former pal, a wonderful entertainer called Kenny Lynch, came to the rescue. This was all on the back of this super movie that was Grease, starring the beautiful Olivia Newton-John and John Travolta. Now, they had a mega smash, as we all know, with You're the One That I Want. And Kenny Lynch's idea, who had also had wonderful success in the charts himself, was to team Hilda Baker up in the role of Olivia Newton-John alongside the comedy actor Arthur Mullard. Right, already you could understand how this worked. The recording, to say the least, was fractious, seemingly because Hilda couldn't remember much of the song, so they did it bit by bit, right? But eventually they got there. Then it exploded simply because they decided that it should be Arthur Mullard and Hilda Baker. And Hilda Baker insisted she always got top billing. So eventually they had to put two versions of the single out and two versions of the pack, right? One and the other, just to placate the stars. Amazingly, the song charted and they ended up appearing on the hit pop show Top of the Pops. I know, I remember it well. And what was interesting about this was it climbed up the charts. Now, according to a source, they couldn't have recorded the song without the very special permission of the songwriter John Farrar. And apparently this was even played to Olivia Newton-John and John Travolta. Olivia Newton-John saying she knew who Hilda was, she was a terrific lady, and why not? It keeps the life of the movie going. Consequently, this would really be Hilda's sort of swan song. Things really went from bad to worse, as I say, for Hilda Baker. Right from the 1950s, where she'd become a star, all thanks to appearing in the good old days for TV with Barney Colahan at the world-famous City Varieties. She'd been already schlepping around for 2 decades, producing her own shows, putting her own unit together. She was a formidable lady. Very, very, very funny woman. Now, sadly, by this point, even though she'd hit the big time, she wasn't considered to be the right fit, for instance, for royal events. But behind the scenes, according to an excellent source, Queen Elizabeth loved Hilda Baker. So much so that she could do a very good impression. You see, Hilda Baker had these sayings of things like, be soon, but she said it in the be soon in a very much Lancastrian accent. And also her catchphrase, she knows, which turned into a record and a movie. Apparently both Queen Elizabeth and, of course, the Queen Mother absolutely loved Hilda Baker, found her incredibly funny. However, as I say, she sort of fell out with the impresario Bernard Delfont. And many people now suspect later down the line in the story that perhaps this was the original onset of Alzheimer's that nobody knew about in the 1950s. Again, where this story gets interesting and delicate in many respects was, well, as she got older, she was unable to continue to perform. On her hit TV series, Nearest and Dearest, and following on from that, Not on Your Nelly, she had to have cue cards all over the place. She infuriated her co-star, Jimmy Jewell. And in fact, so much so that he refused to appear on her This Is Your Life, and likewise, she refused to appear on his. But together, they were box office dynamite. You get the picture. Moving forward, sadly, when she died at the age of 81, well, things had got very bad indeed. She was living literally on pennies. She didn't have much money. She'd been robbed by a former chauffeur and lost in one or two court cases. She ended up living in the entertainment variety home, Brinsworth House. But sadly, when she passed away, only around 10 people attended her funeral. Even though she made millions laugh around the world, seemingly they couldn't remember to pay their respects to her, apart from two, who privately sent flowers to the service of Hilda Baker. Left unsigned and from an excellent source, apparently the Queen and the Queen Mother were brought to tears at her demise, saying what a terrible end when she'd given so much pleasure to so many people. A lovely story, of course, I hope you'll agree, but what a tragic life, and why hasn't that been turned into a movie? Neil Sean in the very heart of London.